chances of surviving when you get caught in a serac fall is, are almost a non-existent. It's not like in a movie. This is real. This is really happening. I'm gonna die.
Well, scaling Mount Everest is no doubt an incredible adventure, but when climbers get stuck up there, it puts other people's lives at risk. Over the last century, more than 300 have died on the mountain. Some of them were rescuers, and others were trying to retrieve bodies. With the number of climbers increasing rapidly, there's a debate about whether anyone should try to save them or just leave them to die. In a moment, we'll be hearing from the French mountaineer, Orianne Aymard, who gave us that amazing footage at the beginning of the programme, and we'll also be hearing from Tshiring Sherpa, a Nepalese guide who's helped to rescue several people. But first, let's take a quick look at what's happening on the mountain.
Towering 8,849 metres, Everest is the tallest point on Earth. With the help of modern technology and skilled guides, successful summits of the mountain are increasing.
Yes, we made it!
But so are deaths. In 2023, Mount Everest took the lives of a record number of people. Of those who've perished over the years, more than 200 bodies still remain on the mountain. Some blame travel companies for commercialising the mountain.
The most obvious solution is probably just to limit the amount of permits that are being handed out each year to clear up some of the congestion. I wouldn't expect that to happen anytime soon. Mount Everest is a huge economic driver for Nepal, bringing in hundreds of wealthy tourists every year and tens of millions of dollars in economic activity.
Increasingly, inexperienced climbers are ascending, causing huge backlogs in the death zone to reach the summit.
New video this morning of that line to reach the top of the world. Climbers stood in freezing conditions waiting to get to the peak, and allegations that some were pushing and jostling for photographs on a space roughly the size of 2 ping pong tables thousands of meters up.
Its popularity has also caused the mountain to become littered with debris.
Clean-up expedition just this year brought down over 24,000 pounds of garbage. And that's not all. There's also a lot of human up the mountain, which thanks in part to climate change, is now sliding downhill.
The whole trek can take up to 2 months and costs thousands of dollars, with extreme weather severely limiting the window to make a summit attempt.
A very narrow 3-day window of low wind conditions opens up for climbers to breach the death zone and head toward the summit.
As well as the extreme altitude and challenging terrain, climbers must also contend with weather disasters, including vicious blizzards and avalanches. Along the way, navigating through the Khumbu icefall, an unstable glacial field.
Temba knows that the icefall doctor he replaced died the previous year on this mountain, down a crevasse.
To get to Camp 3, climbers must traverse Lhotse Face, a steep wall of ice with a high chance of avalanches.
A serious test in fitness and endurance, it averages 40 to 50 degrees with occasional 80-degree bulges for hours at a time at extreme altitude.
The last stretch before the summit is the Hillary Step, a nearly vertical rock face and the last real challenging terrain before reaching the top of the peak. The fatal factor on Everest is not the terrain, but the elevation. Everything above 8,000 metres counts as the death zone, where air lacks enough oxygen to sustain human life for long.
If you took somebody from sea level to the top of Everest, no supplemental oxygen, no support, they would be unconscious within minutes.
This year, the Nepalese government decided to remove some of the deceased from the mountain.
People believe that they are entering a divine space when they climb up the mountains, but if they see dead bodies on the way up, it can have a negative effect and might hamper their aim. We have to bring them back as much as possible. And if we keep leaving them behind, our mountains will turn into a graveyard in the future.
Moving the corpses comes with significant obstacles. Frozen bodies can weigh over 136 kilograms and over time become encased in the ice.
They chip away at ice and sometimes use boiling water to rescue bodies.
Helicopters can only reliably aid in body recovery from Camp 2, and operations to remove bodies have previously resulted in fatalities themselves, making it a perilous task. As bodies are so difficult to retrieve, climbers must frequently pass corpses as they make their way up the mountain.
My God, somebody's there! Ah! No!
Okay, let's bring in our first guest now, Orianne Aymard, a mountaineer and author who was rescued twice on Everest. Orianne, thank you so much for being with us. Before we get into the conversation, let's take a quick look at some more of the video that you sent us.
Are you okay? Yes. Yes, perilous. Yeah.
So, Orianne, you had a terrible fall on the way up and on the way down. Describe what happened.
Well, it's a long expedition. It's a 2-month expedition. And what happened is during the acclimatization phase, so I was going down from Camp 3. So Camp 3 is at 7,200 meters. Everything was I was doing well, no altitude sickness. And while crossing the Jangbu Icefall, so the Jangbu Icefall is this huge glacier with many seracs, like enormous block of ice, that can fall anytime. And what happened, I was more or less in the middle of the Jangbu Icefall. I heard like the noise of the seracs falling down. So seracs were actually collapsing just behind me. And when I heard the noise, I thought, okay, this is the end. Because the chances of surviving when you get caught in a serac fall is, are almost a non-existent. And before me, 3 Sherpas had died at the same place, more or less, on the Jangbu Icefall, like 2 weeks before. And when I heard the noise, I say, okay, this is it. It's not like in a movie. This is real. This is really happening. I'm gonna die. And what I did, I just bent down, I put my hands on the helmet, and I made a short prayer, but very short, like you have maybe 1 second, and because it goes so fast. And I got hit by one of the seracs. So it's maybe the size of a huge car, like a 4-wheel drive, something like this. And so I got strongly hit, and luckily I survived. You can call it whatever you want, but for me it's a miracle because I should be dead, with such an impact. And when I regained consciousness, my Sherpa was calling me Orianne, Orianne, and he saw that I was alive. And I also realized I was alive. But then when he saw me, he said I was bleeding, but I could not see my face, but I was bleeding. And my Sherpa told me, okay, now you stand up because other seracs might fall down. So we need to leave this place. So it was like survival instinct. I had no energy anymore, but I stood up immediately, and I kept walking.
You weren't able to rescue yourself. Is that correct? You had some help?
So I did what we call the summit push, and so I reached the top of Everest. But on the way down, what happened is because I was so exhausted, nothing. We had stayed 3 days in the death zone, above 8,000 meters, which was not the initial plan, but because of the storm, we had to stay longer. I had no oxygen left. So what happened during the descent, I was so tired that I fell down and I broke my left foot. And so at the level of the yellow band, which is like 7,800 or 700 meters, and there is no rescue. So I had to go down with a broken foot and with frostbite, because last year was super cold. This is the coldest year they ever had. So I had to go down with frostbite and a broken foot. But because rescue is not possible up there, it's too difficult. So I had to go, it took me 10 hours to go to Camp 3 at 7,200 meters. And there I thought that I could be a rescue, but no. I had to go down and again, and I had to reach Camp 2 at 6,400 meters. So I arrived at Camp 2 at night.
Orianne, we've heard that over 300 people have died on the mountain in the last century, and some of those deaths are as a result of people rescuing or trying to rescue others, or trying to retrieve the bodies from the mountain. And now there's a bit of a debate, isn't there, about whether or not people should put their lives at risk to do that. What do you think?
Just take my example. What happened when I just broke my foot, at the yellow band, and it was not possible to be rescued. But I remember I could see all the climbers going down, and nobody actually asked me if I was okay, if I needed help. And my Sherpa had disappeared at that time, so I was in front. So I was really by myself. But I don't condemn, the people, the climbers, because everyone is exhausted, and everyone is actually, it's like, again, we are all trying to go down, so I should not expect, help from the others. Maybe my Sherpa, yes, that's another thing, but I should not expect. So people the climbers should expect also to. Rescue is not always possible,
Were you disappointed in your Sherpa disappearing?
Yes, of course. I don't know if he really realized what happened. I tried to understand when I came back to Kathmandu. But I was just thinking, it was not about being disappointed. I was just thinking, I have to go down, whatever happens, I have to go down. So that was my only thought, going down. And that was it. After, when I saw him back in Kathmandu, then, it was a bit different. But it was also like he was there when I got caught in the Seracs Fall. So it's very difficult, to judge, and
so,
he helped me during the Seracs Fall.
Just a final question, Orianne. You've achieved your, the dream, but do you intend to go back to Everest?
Maybe from the Tibetan side, because you don't have to actually to cross the Khumbu Icefall. So because I told myself that never again I would go back to the Khumbu Icefall. It's not possible, But why not? If one day I have the money, because it's also very costly to climb Everest, but why not? I would love to climb from Tibet, from the Tibetan side. And maybe it's also possible to climb it, but from the Nuptse, from the other side. You don't necessarily have to go through the Khumbu Icefall. That will be another path. So why not? It's possible. But there are other mountains to climb. I don't have to go back to Everest,
Well, Orianne, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us on the Nexus today. Much appreciated. Our next guest is an author and climbing coach, Arnette, who has successfully summited Everest and has taught others to do the same for decades now. Let's take a quick look at him in action.
Hello, this is Alan calling from the summit of Mount Everest. It's sunrise here. It's just absolutely beautiful. It's about 5 a.m. We had a very, very fast trip up. Climb on. This is Alan.
And Alan joins us now. Welcome to the program, Alan. Let's talk about your work that you do with your clients. How do you train them? What do you train them in?
Hi, Matthew. Thanks for having me. It's called Summit Coach, and it's a consulting business where I give people advice on how to either get into the sport or how to achieve their dreams. My typical client is around 40 years old. They're very successful in life, family typically, but there's something that they want just for themselves, and they think mountaineering will scratch that itch. And so we talk about, getting into the sport, what mountains to climb, what type of gear to have, who to climb with for their most safety, and hopefully the success with the summit.
And we've heard in our program so far, it can be very perilous, especially going up Everest. What advice do you give them?
Preparation and experience, and also going with the right company. So many people today are lured to Everest due to low prices. There's been a very serious change in the mountaineering world over the last 10 years. Back in the 90s, venture consultants would charge $65,000 to climb Everest, and today you can climb Everest for around $30,000. And that's attracted a whole new demographic of people who really don't understand the risk involved, because Everest is still a very deadly mountain. 26 people have died on the mountain just in the last 2 years only.
So more and more people are going up the mountain, and some of them are quite inexperienced. There's an ethical question here. The Nepalese armies and the Sherpas are the ones who have to come and rescue you or retrieve your body should the worst go wrong. Just wondering, in the mountaineering community, is there a debate about whether or not they should even bother to do that?
Absolutely. With some companies, you're actually asked to sign a release, if you will, that says what will happen if you do die on the mountain. And typically you're given three choices: leave your body on the mountain, retrieve it and return to Kathmandu for cremation, or try to retrieve your body and return it to your home country. Most climbers would prefer to have their body left on the mountain, but the families often request for the body to be recovered, and it can cost tens of thousands of dollars and require a very strong, talented team, typically of Sherpas, 6, 8, even 10 Sherpas to retrieve a body that's frozen into the mountain. It's quite sad and quite morbid.
And in fact, this has happened on one of your expeditions, not on Everest, another mountain. Can you tell us what were the circumstances and what choice your client made?
Yeah, it was on a mountain called Choi OU. We climbed it from the Tibetan side. It's one of the 14 mountains above 26,000 feet or 8,000 meters. And Alex had summited with his climbing partner, and he came back down to Camp 3 after they summited, and we were coming up to go for our summit bid, and we found him lifeless in his tent. Actually, he was in a sleeping bag. But we knew from the prior release that he had signed that he requested for his body to remain on the mountain. So we respectfully were able to keep him in a sleeping bag and take him over to the edge of a crevasse. We had a ceremony, said a prayer, and again, respectfully dropped him into the crevasse where I assume he lies today.
And the increase in numbers of mountaineers climbing Everest, has that done anything to the mountain negatively?
Well, yeah, that's a really good question, because Mount Everest is a huge, huge massif. And I believe climate change has had more of an impact with the areas like the Khumbu Icefall, which is a 2,000-foot moving glacier that lies between Camp 1 and Base Camp. And that glacier is thinning each year. And as a result, it's becoming more and more unstable. In terms of the actual number of people climbing, yes, that's gone up. When I climbed it, we had maybe 200 people summited that year. This past spring in 2024, there were over 600 people who summited. The biggest change, though, is that we're seeing more Sherpas summit than foreigners, than clients. And that's because typically the inexperienced clients require a lot more support. And it's not unusual these days to have one foreigner climbing with 2 or 3 Sherpa. So as a result, you do have the opportunity for more trash on the mountain. However, that is really overstated. But also crowds, which also can be overstated. A lot of it depends upon the weather, Matthew. If the weather is really, if the winds are under 30 miles an hour, then most people can summit. If they're over 30 miles an hour, then most people will wait until they calm back down. But that typically happens for about 2 weeks each year in the middle of May. In 2019, there was only 3 days. So you had 600 people trying to squeeze onto the mountain in that 3-day period. And that's what created those long lines that we saw. This past year, that was not a problem because we had almost 2 weeks of really fine weather that allowed people to summit with. There are an occasional queue here and there, but nothing serious.
And Alan, just finally, there will be people, perhaps in their 40s or early 50s or whatever, who think, yes, I'd like to give that a go. What important advice would you give them, and how much should they budget for such a trip?
The big problem is that most people, they don't know what they don't know because they've never been above 26,000 feet. Most people haven't been above 20,000 feet. So I recommend climbing mountains like Mont Blanc, Peak Lenin, Denali in Alaska, Aconcagua in Argentina, and gaining that experience so that you go in being as self-sufficient as you possibly can. In terms of budgeting, it's really the prices these days go all the way from $30,000 up to, well, $130,000. And a lot of that depends upon what company that you climb with and what type of support that you require. So choosing the right operator that you go with is critically important, not only for your summit success, but also for your own personal safety coming back home to your family.
Alan and Arnette, thank you so much. Much appreciated. Well, the task of retrieving bodies and cleaning up the mountain after the climbers go home falls on Nepalese soldiers and the teams of Sherpas sent to help them. In these pictures, we can see Tshiring Sherpa on Everest with the army on a government cleanup operation. He's helped bring down 4 bodies this year, as well as tons of rubbish. And Tshiring joins us now right from Kathmandu. Welcome to the program, Tshiring. Do you ever get scared going up the mountain to save people?
Of course, when I'm a guide, so when I go to the mountains, I'm not scared I'm a very proud. I feel very proud myself.
And of course, you're very familiar with the mountain. How many times do you think you've been up Everest?
So Everest, my Everest is 3 times summit, but other 8,000 meters around 15 times my summit attempt.
And Tshiring, it's hard enough to go up the mountain, but to go up there to rescue someone, of course, has even more risks. What kind of risks do you face when you go up there to either rescue someone or to retrieve a body?
The weather situation is most important for the rescue missions, and also the teamwork and also the technique, how we're gonna retrieve the bodies and for the rescue, and how to collect for the garbages. This is different things than climb mountains. So we have to be uh, carefully make clearly that we have to be ensure that they all have a good enough education for the safety protocol and also the weather situations. So this is the major main challenging for the rescue missions.
I understand some people think that it's not right to ask the Nepalese army and Sherpas like yourself to risk their lives rescuing people or retrieving bodies. Do you think it is right or not?
We have to clear up, clean the mountains. This is very one of the positive thing for the not only for the Nepal, but only all the mountaineers and all over the world. So this is one of the environmental issues going on now. So this is one of the best project, and also the retrieve the bodies. This is very a very nice project for I found it to government will approach this since from this year. So there is the lot of things we have to clarify before the retrieving bodies and take a rescue down. So all the I think all the Sherpas, all the mountaineers, uh, they can do, but we have a good educations for the technique and these things. Then it's of course they're quite dangerous, high risks, and also difficulties.
Does your family worry about you when you embark on a rescue mission?
Oh yes, of course. My beautiful family, they are always talking about take care about yourself, and of course because of I'm a guiding since a long time in the mountaineering. So they're quite worried about it, but that's my job, so I have to do it.
Tshiring, just on a technical point, we understand from the report we heard earlier in the program that the typical corpse can go from 80 kilograms to almost double that when it's frozen. Does the sheer weight pose any difficulties for you and your team?
Oh yes. So when I retired down from Lhotse summit, just 6 meter down from the summit, 8,516 meters. That's 8,510 meters. So uh, after the 12 years, when I feel to retrap down, so that's lot of icy inside of the body. Body is like frozen body, so it's really difficult to retrap and also the pack, and that's why it's really heavy. I think inside all of the body is frozen, so that's the region. It's we feel like our team feel like it's about 180 kilograms.
And you mentioned, Tshiring, that you've been working around the mountain for quite a long time, 20 years, I understand. Over that time, have the types of people who come there changed? Are there There seems to be a lot more people. Are there inexperienced people now coming?
Example for the Mount Everest, there are many people want to summit. Many people want to climb, even without any experience. But other mountains, they are quite experienced for the other mountains like Annapurna, Kanchenjunga, Manaslu. But for the Everest, I think now I feel like they are quite fashionable to climb Everest, and they show they feel they are proud feel even any without permission without experience, they would like to come and climb. So I found this.
And Tshiring, just a final question. You've been doing this for 20 years. It's very hard work. How many more years do you have left in you to go up that mountain?
How much I can, so I will do my job till the end.
Well done. Thank you so much, Tshiring Sherpa. Very positive note to end on, and good luck with everything. Thank you. And thank you at home and on your phones for watching. If you want to see this episode or any of our previous episodes, do go to our channel on YouTube. Just type in Nexus TRT World. Till next week then, goodbye.